Okay, so this is my model of the larynx. So as you can see, we have different muscles and cartilages and ligaments that make up the larynx. Below the larynx is the trachea. Here is the first tracheal ring, the one in red, and above the larynx is the pharynx. The main purpose of it is to protect the airway from aspiration or to protect the respiratory system from food or other debris that enters the mouth. It also could assist in breathing and also in phonation. So before I go to cartilages, let me point out the relationship of the hyoid bone to larynx. The hyoid bone, which is in pink, right over here, is a bone in which the thyroid cartilage is suspended. And there are 6 cartilages that make up the larynx. First, the epiglottis, right here. The epiglottis is essential because it can close off the opening to the larynx by flapping over and protecting it from food or debris or anything entering the mouth. And the next cartilage is the thyroid cartilage. It is the largest and consists of broad lamina on either side, which meets at the midline and form the laryngeal prominence or the Adam's apple. It is larger in males than in females. The next one is the cricoid cartilage, which is in blue. This cartilage forms a complete ring. Anteriorly, it has a narrow arch right over here, and at the back is a broad lamina. There are 2 depressions at the back of the cricoid, and this is where the posterior cricoarytenoid muscles will attach. The inferior horn of the thyroid cartilage articulates with the cricoid cartilage right here. There's a facet on the cricoid laterally which articulates with the inferior horn of the thyroid, and this is a synovial joint, or what we call the cricothyroid joints. Okay, and the next one is the arytenoid cartilages, which sits on top of the cricoid, the one in blue, and the arytenoid is the one in green. And on top of the arytenoid is the horn-shaped cartilage, the white one, or the corniculate cartilages. The base of the arytenoid cartilages articulate with the cricoid cartilage, and this joint is called the cricoarytenoid joint. The apex articulate with the corniculate cartilage. It consists also of 2 processes. One is the vocal process, which serves as the point of attachment to the vocal ligament, right over here. And the muscle process is the process that is sticking out posteriorly and laterally, and this serves as a point of attachment for the posterior and lateral cricoarytenoid muscles. The last cartilages are the cuneiform. These cartilages are suspended in the quadrangular membrane, which is not shown in this model. Now let's talk about the membranes and ligaments of the larynx. It can be divided into 2 parts, the intrinsic and the extrinsic membranes or ligaments. The extrinsic ligaments or membranes connect the larynx to the other parts of the body, whereas the intrinsic membranes or ligaments are the ones that connect the individual cartilages of the larynx together. So the first membrane that is in this model is the thyrohyoid membrane, which is one here in pink. It is the membrane that connects the hyoid bone and the thyroid cartilage. So as you can see, there's a hole on each side, the one in black and this one right over here. This actually serves as an opening or hole for the superior laryngeal nerves to enter. The recurrent laryngeal nerve, on the other hand, runs alongside of the trachea to innervate the muscles of the larynx, except for the cricothyroid muscles. The hyoepiglottic ligament is right here, and it connects the hyoid bone and the epiglottis. The cricotracheal ligament, which is the one here in white, right here, it connects the cricoid cartilage to the trachea below. The cricothyroid membrane, right here, and the quadrangular membrane, which we can't see in this model, forms the ligaments, and combined with the folds of mucosa makes the vocal folds. The cricothyroid membrane or ligament attaches to the arch of the cricoid and inside of the thyroid cartilage, which is here in blue. The quadrangular membrane attaches to the lateral of the epiglottis and attaches to the arytenoid cartilages and the corniculate cartilage above it, and it also attaches to the thyroid. This membrane forms a thickening called the vestibular ligament or membrane, which forms the false vocal fold. The upper portion of the cricothyroid forms the vocal ligament or the true vocal fold. And when we have folds of mucosa that folds around the ligaments, it forms the false and the true vocal folds. The mucosa simply means lining of the larynx. So the mucosa of the larynx attaches to the lateral border of the epiglottis. This is right here. You can see the one in purple. And to the arytenoid. So it's this purple paper runs laterally from the epiglottis. It runs down laterally and articulates with the arytenoid muscles. And this forms the fold called the ardyepiglotic fold. And this mucus forms the laryngeal inlet or opening of the larynx. So the term mucosal wave is simply the movement of the mucous membrane of the vocal fold during phonation. The vocal folds move in a wave-like manner, like opening and closing. The myoelastic aerodynamic theory is regarded as the most accurate model to explain the mechanism of the vocal fold vibration. Myo refers to muscles, elastic refers to the ability of those muscles to return to their original state or form, and aero refers to the airflow, and pressure and dynamic refers to the movement and change. So how does this work? So when the medial compression, right here, that happens right here, holds the vocal folds together at midline, air pressure beneath the folds or subglottal pressure begins to increase. So when this air pressure becomes strong enough, it pushes the vocal folds apart or away from the midline, and air passes through the vocal tract, setting the cords into vibration, and because of the vocal fold's elasticity, the vocal fold begins to recoil back. So as the folds begin to close, the air pressure decreases and becomes negative, which we all know as the Bernoulli principle or Bernoulli effect, which creates a vacuum and brings the vocal folds together or closed, and the process repeats itself. So it is important to note that the vocal fold completed one cycle of vibration due to both myoelastic and aerodynamic forces, and not because of the muscle contraction. So let's go ahead and go to the muscles of the larynx. So the muscles of the larynx can be divided into two, the extrinsic and intrinsic muscles. In this model, I am going to talk about the extrinsic muscles. The first muscle is the cricothyroid muscles, okay, which is the one here in the very front, the kind of a dirty white color and the pink. It has two parts, the pars recta and the pars oblique. The vertical part is attached to the superior horn, of the thyroid cartilage, and the action of this muscle when it contracts is going to bring the thyroid forward and downward, which means that the vocal fold will be stretched, which means more tension on the vocal cords, which means higher pitch sound will be produced. This is the only muscle that is innervated by the external branch of the superior laryngeal nerve. All the other muscles of the larynx is innervated by the recurrent laryngeal nerve of the vagus nerve. A unilateral superior laryngeal injury, which can cause a loss of motor function to the cricothyroid muscle, can cause voice change, which individual usually interpret as hoarseness. So most common finding for this case is the diplophonia, which means decrease in range of pitch. However, on the other hand, a damage to the recurrent laryngeal nerve could result in insufficiency of the intrinsic muscles to close, causing breathy voice. The next muscle is the cricoarytenoid muscles, and it's the lateral and the posterior cricoarytenoid muscles. First one is the posterior. This muscle originates at the depressions of the broad lamina, right here in the very back of the cricoid cartilage. And this muscle inserts into the muscular process of the arytenoid cartilage. So what this does, when it contracts, it will laterally rotate the arytenoid cartilage and will result in the opening of the glottis. So this is the only muscle that does this. Paralysis of this muscle may lead to asphyxiation, as they are the only muscle to open the vocal fold. The next one is the lateral, right here in the light blue, the lateral cricoarytenoid. It originates at the cricoid arch, right here, and inserts at the muscular process of the arytenoid, just like the posterior cricoarytenoid muscle. But because it has a different origin, it will produce a different movement. Since it sits at the front of the muscular process, right over here, it will pull the muscular process laterally this way, and it will close the glottis. So this is one of the adductors. The interarytenoid muscles is next, which is right here. They run between the arytenoid cartilages, which is right here, and there are two muscles attached to it. There are the transverse and the oblique arytenoid muscles. The transverse, which is the one in yellow, runs between the posterior lateral surface of the arytenoid cartilage to the other arytenoid cartilage. Its action will bring the vocal folds together. The oblique arytenoid, which is in red, on the other hand, originates at the muscular process of the arytenoid cartilage. Same as transverse, only it runs obliquely and attaches on the opposite arytenoid cartilage. The next one is the thyroarytenoid muscles, which is right over here, the pink. It consists of the thyroarytenoid and vocalis muscles. The vocalis muscle lies lateral to the vocal ligament. It originates in the lateral surface of the vocal process of the arytenoid and inserts along the vocal ligament, where it also attaches to the thyroid angle. So you can see right there. The function of the thyroid muscle and vocalis muscle is to adjust the tension in the vocal folds. So when this muscle contracts, it brings the arytenoids closer to the thyroid cartilage, and this results into slackening of the vocal ligaments, which produces lower pitch sound. The function of the vocalis muscle is to make small adjustments, which result in changing the pitch and quality of the sounds produced. The larger part of the thyroarytenoid is responsible for the bigger adjustment or tension on the vocal folds. So voice production will not be possible without the help of the respiratory system. The muscles involved during the respiration, such as the inspiratory and expiratory muscles, and their movements make production of sounds or talking possible. The muscle movements, due to the active and passive forces, can have adjustment capabilities during speech, which helps us produce soft or loud speech. The passive forces include the natural recoil of the muscles, cartilages, and lung tissue. The active forces include strengths of the muscles within the chest wall, pattern of movement, and the amount of air contained in the lungs. So, the more air the lungs contain, the greater the force that can be produced, or greater sound. And that's it for the larynx. Thank you.